Good afternoon to you sports fans. It's your boys from Table 5, courtesy of the Sports Bar, John J., Adam Fuller. Coming to you a little late in the week this week. We wanted to do a finals pregame talk. We have some guests in, have a little bit of talk, but everything just kind of fell apart, man, this week. It's been a tough week on me as well. It's a little bit sick. Had a passing in the family. So going from there. But it's been a rough week to say the least. So, but let's jump right into it, man. We wanted to, before we get to the NBA Finals, obviously, which is this week, we wanted to talk a little bit about some local baseball, in addition to some Kings hockey. Obviously, LA still in the mix, albeit very thin, down 3-1. Your thoughts on the baseball season, or did you, in addition to the local events?
Yeah. Yesterday was the first round of the MLB 2013 draft, and one of the local guys, I've seen him play, live, freshman, sophomore, junior year. I really didn't get to see him play this year. J.P. Crawford, he's a middle infielder. They might move him out to the outfield, but what happened was he got drafted yesterday, 16th overall by the Phillies. So he has the potential to be Jimmy Rollins, their shortstop right now. He has potential maybe 4 or 5 years down the line to be his replacement. He's a guy that, has some speed, steal some bases, get on base, hit for a decent average. Might not hit for that much power, but a little bit of pop, kind of like how Rollins was. Rollins, I think the most home runs he had was 30, but for the most part, he stayed around 15 or 20 for his whole career, and he stole about 40 bases a season. So, we'll see. It's good to see, local guys, get picked up by the big leagues, and especially when you've seen the guy play in person, you're like, dang, okay. Well, if he makes it to the league, I'll be like, hey.
Definitely, it is more impressive. It is more impressive. You get the kind of homegrown talent. I remember once I got to see Mark McGwire play in college, and he hit 2 bombs that day. I mean, they were just bombs. One, we didn't even see it. We got out of there so quick. So, sometimes when you're able to see a guy play at that level and then make it to the next level, it's always kind of special. Not even if even if you really didn't know the guy. Maybe he was just, in your alma mater, or he went to your, he went to your school for a year or two, or you got to see the guy up close, or, you remember when he had pimples on his face and stuff like that. So it's always kind of interesting. A lot of people don't know when the MLB draft is, and I must admit I'm guilty as well. Because
they somewhat advertise it on ESPN, but really, since the MLB Network came along, most of all the baseball stuff, it's always on MLB Network. So, if you don't have cable, you kind of won't know about it. And, they don't really, advertise the MLB Network, except if you're on the MLB Network, if you turn into that channel. But
Sure.
No one really knows about it,
Sure, absolutely. Point number 2 was, were we?
Yeah, Kings down 3-1. It's interesting because Chicago, they were down 3-1 against Detroit last round, and they came all the way back and won. The thing with hockey is I think it switches from game to game. I think it's a little bit, more reasonable to come back from 3-1 in hockey than it is in, NBA or that set of circumstance. Because usually in the NBA, the most talented team wins, or the better coached team wins. Hockey is kind of like a crapshoot because you get good goaltending one game, and the next game he just can't stop. He just can't keep the puck in front of him. So
right. Well, I've always felt the same way about hockey, that it is kind of a crapshoot because you're playing for loose pucks. you're playing for, who knows? The guy, guy may get into a fight and get thrown out of a game, penalty minutes. I mean, there's so many variables. To me, it's like hockey is about as awkward. I don't want to say awkward. I mean, I want to say hockey is probably as unpredictable as baseball, in the regard that, a pitch here, a pitch there, and, a guy can either score a home run, a bad call, by an umpire, can put a guy on and start a huge rally. So, again, there are things that there's so many variables in hockey. I think the main reason this story is important is because it obviously is L.A. hockey. You know what I mean? And the Kings are the Stanley Cup winners, which is, impressive in its own right. Who knew that, with Dwight Howard coming to town, that the championship would be the Stanley Cup? You know what I mean? I mean, not saying that anybody I didn't expect them to win a championship, obviously. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying myself or anyone expected the Lakers to win a championship. But it's just a weird irony that the championship you do get happens to be in a sport that, seems to be as foreign to Southern California, as, snow in Hawaii. You know what I mean? They don't seem likely. And so, but they should be commended, nonetheless. It's very impressive. I can't name 5 guys on the roster. I'm guilty. But, for all those hockey fans who have stayed true to the Kings, props to you, because you are the reason that, they're there, as well as the team in general. But, so kudos to that. That being said, I don't think they'll make it. I think 3-1 is tough. I know that Chicago just did it, but I think that Chicago is playing better than Detroit, and I've seen a couple of the games. I think Chicago is playing better than Detroit did with a 3-1 lead. So I think that it's hard. Again, it's hard to gauge. It's hard to gauge that momentum in hockey because it's such a loose sport like that. So it's hard to gauge that momentum. But again, I think that Chicago, just what I've seen, has seemed to play better with a 3-1 lead than Detroit did. So that we'll see how that shakes out. Obviously, we're the King.
Yeah, Chicago's been as far as regular season, they had the best record pretty much all year. So maybe they hit the slump, but they're getting back on track right now, maybe.
Right. So to me that's very misleading. It's very misleading to say that, okay, we were down 3-1, but this team is down 3-1. So again, like I said, my hat's off to the Kings. I am very impressed with what they've done, and I'm not even really a hockey fan, but they have made me stand up and take notice just from the standpoint of you win the Cup one year, and then you're right back in the mix heavy the next year. And you're not playing a slouch team. This Blackhawks team did win the Cup a couple years ago, so you're playing with a perennial, contender. You're not playing with a scrub team at all by any means. So, again, hats off to them, and we'll be watching. But on to the big story, man. Let's get right into it. Obviously, the Miami Heat dropped that one last night. And, I think what surprised me most about anything is 2 things. Number one, it surprised me the media scrutiny. We want LeBron, save Jesus, and Obama and everything else at the same time. And if he shoots too much in the fourth quarter, we call him selfish. If he doesn't, if he doesn't shoot enough, we wonder what the hell happened. And I think at the end of the day, the only thing that really mattered was that they got the loss. If they had got the win, those 18 rebounds would have been enough. Because let's face it, 18 rebounds is no slouch. So I'm no big, LeBron. Everybody says, oh, you're a LeBron defender. I'm not a LeBron defender. But if you look at the game that he quote unquote quit against the Boston Celtics, when he took the jersey off and that was his last game as a Cleveland Cavalier, he had a triple-double in that game. So I'm really kind of tired of not substantial facts being backed up when it comes to a player that we don't like. And I always say this. I always say this because I feel like at the end of the day, if you call yourself a real sports fan, you have to take into consideration what this guy is trying to do with this team. Now, if you really look at this team and how they're constructed, Chris Bosh shooting jump shots, to me, that's coaching. That's game plan. Number two, the funny thing about D. Wade, though, is still he's getting a pass. He's still sliding by. You complained in the last series that you and Chris weren't getting enough opportunities. Lo and behold, here I come with 10 assists, some of those to you, and you and Chris can't get it done. They had 30 points between them. Chris Bosh and D. Wade. They had 30 points between them. 17 from Wade, 13 from Chris Bosh. But none in the fourth quarter from Chris Bosh, and only 4 in the second half from D. Wade. So it was a deceptive 30 at best. And a guy like LeBron, that's 18 points, 18 rebounds. Go ahead.
So what is a good for those two? What is a good gauge on how well they're playing as far as like points per game? Like, should they?
Well, for me, honestly, that's a good
both of those
question.
Guys combine for like 40, maybe, or?
Well, no, that's a good question. But my point is even this. A better question to ask, in my opinion, is not how many points I can get from you. It's when I get those points. Okay. See, Dwayne Wade, to me, and this is just my opinion, has always historically, he's kind of relished that role as a closer. He's always sort of embraced that role, and the media has tagged him with that role of being a closer. He hasn't closed in the playoffs yet. Game 7 against the Indiana Pacers, that was only his second game of scoring more than 20 points in the entire playoffs. So if I'm only going to get under 20 points from you, and you're this all-world player and Hall of Famer that everybody thinks you are, except for me, then you should close. That's your role. You should close. And the cold part about it is nobody's even really calling him on the fact that you tried to pseudo-call LeBron out the last game and say me and Chris ain't getting enough touches. And so now nobody's even really that's what I hate about the media because, it's not sexy to criticize D. Wade. I don't know why. It's not sexy to put D. Wade on the hot seat. I don't know why. I can't tell you. And it's like I'm not looking for the media to. I'm not looking for the media to put him on the hot seat. But it would be nice if they held him to some accountability because the last time I checked, he's the architect of the big three. He's the one that made all the phone calls. He's the one that called Chris. He's the one that called LeBron and said, hey, come down here to South Beach. You're the one who did all that. And so I think that he's not sharing the blame. Sure, it's okay to criticize Chris Bosh, but, Chris Bosh has always been sort of the 2.5 guy, they call him anyway. He's not really the big three, which I disagree with, and I think he should be held accountable, and I think Chris is much better than that because, let's face it, he was the franchise player in Toronto. You can say what you want to about that one. Chris Bosh was the franchise, he was the cornerstone player in Toronto. A better Kevin Love, a more athletic Kevin Love, a better, rebounding Kevin Love could give you 20 a night. I just hate how these guys, the criticism of them has just been a backseat.
It seemed like he was more aggressive, like as far as going to the basket too in Toronto. I
should never see him shoot a 3 in a game. I should never see him shoot a 3 in a game. But you know what that is? That's coaching. Pau Gasol had that same problem. Pau Gasol had that exact same problem where it got comfortable because let's face it, shooting threes, it's easy.
Right. And he shot a decent percentage in the playoffs. He shot more threes than he probably shot in the regular season, and he shot a decent percentage so far. But, his game is 15 feet in, maybe 18 feet in, but that's where his bread and butter is. He has a really nice mid-range game,
Absolutely. And the crazy part to me, though, is the real crazy part is that when you look at what Chris Bosh has been able to not do in this series, which is body anybody up, really out-hustle or outwork anybody, it's like, why are we still talking about LeBron James? I mean, 18 and 10, look, that's a minimum. 18 and 10, that's a minimum of 38 points you account for in the game. Minimum, because we don't know how many of those were three. And let's face it, that last assist he would have had was to Chris Bosh, who missed a three, which would have put them within 1 point. So he accounts for 38 points. He has 18 rebounds. We don't know how many of those possessions we turned into points. Let's just say a quarter of them we turned into points, or a third of them. That's 6. 6 rebounds we turn into points. That's 12 points right there. So I account for 50. We only score 88. I mean, there's got to be some more math. I mean, to me, you can't just bring the we hate LeBron and he took the easy way out. You can't bring that to me because there's no substance behind that. It's clear the guy's getting no help. It's clear he's getting no kind of, no heavy-duty bench production. They don't have, Norris Cole played well last night. But they don't have a J.R. Smith. They don't have who's at the Clippers? Jamal Crawford. They don't have a guy, Manu Ginobili. A guy who's going to come off the bench.
Even Jared Jack, he was pretty big for Golden State,
Absolutely. Held them together in that late playoff run. So, like I said, I think this is San Antonio series to lose. I still think they're going to win the next game because I don't think there's any consistency out of the Miami Heat. I just don't think there's any consistency. And I think as long as everybody's walking around picking their nose and blaming LeBron for everything, they're never going to get anything done. It's funny how he can't win because they had a segment. Do you want him to play more like Mike or do you want him to play more like Magic? Now, I want him to play more like LeBron. That's just me. Because you get it's a mix
of both.
It's a combination.
He can take over a game by facilitating, or he can take over a game by his scoring and jump shooting ability and just overall athleticism too. So and
there's another factor in there. There's another factor in there too that a lot of people are ignoring. Hustle. I mean, you can't have your point forward lead your team in rebounds, but it be by a high percentage. So it's not as if you're leading the team in rebounds, but we got 7 from you. Or we got 10 from you. The guy had 18 boards last night. 8 rebounds. You can't have that many rebounds on a team where, we got a bunch of hustle guys anyway, a Birdman and people like that. Come on, man. Come on. I'm really disappointed in, the media. Not saying that I expected anything else, because I think that, the media is always going to look for the controversy. They're always going to look for the most popular guy to attack. And it's really a shame because he's getting no production. Ray Allen gave them nothing yesterday. Nothing. He hit a couple of shots and that was it. Their whole team. And I know they have to be exhausted from the Indiana series. I mean, you can't, I'm not going to even, pretend like, that's not a factor. I know the media doesn't want to, and media says, well, you showed up in the first quarter. Yeah, but you're playing on adrenaline. You're playing on, just the hype of being there. We're at home. We're in the finals. I got to sleep in my own bed last night. But you're not playing with any kind of real gas in the tank. You're not playing with any kind of, that gas in the tank you got right there, that's fool's gold. So like I said, I just think that, I said it before, I'll say it again, San Antonio has too many variables. They showed it last night.
What? So game 2 is Saturday or Sunday?
It's Sunday. It's Sunday. So it's a long layoff. Yeah. So it's a long layoff, which is good and helps the Miami Heat. But again, it also helps the Spurs. But I wanted to get into kind of another little topic too as well, and talk about Tim Duncan. And I kind of have to pull back something I said, which is about him being talked about in the breath of some of the greatest players of all time. And I still think he belongs there based on the amount of success he's had in his career. Here's my problem, though. It's clear he's not the best player on that team. That's loud and clear. He wasn't the Finals MVP those teams won it. I'm correct in that, right?
Right. The last time they won it, it was Tony Parker.
Right. Okay. So it's clear you're not even the best player on this team right now. Tony showed it last night. Tony showed it last night that this is his team. And the problem I have with that is that how can you put a guy who is, arguably success-wise one of the greatest, ever, but how do you put him in that shape of somebody who's potentially in one of the greatest ever, but yet he wasn't even the Finals MVP of the last championship? And I can pretty much guarantee you, if they win this Finals, it's not going to be because of Tim Duncan. I mean, you can just see that. I mean, he had a good game. 20 and 14, that's nothing. Hey, listen, for his age, that's fine. I'm not mad at him, but I'm just not ready to put him in that upper echelon of players because he didn't really, I don't think he's won this entire series this entire playoffs for them. It's been, Manu had a good game yesterday, a guy who's always overlooked on their team. And Tony is clearly the best player on their team. Kawhi had another very good game. Green had a good game. I don't know. I'm not ready to put Tim there. How about what say you?
Yeah, I'd say he has benefited from the system and just, having Tony Parker and Ginobili. I mean, Ginobili has showed stretches of he could be probably the best player on the team, in a given stretch. And, I think, no doubt he's been effective, but he hasn't really dominated, the game. He doesn't really dominate the game. He's just been real efficient,
Whereas if you see their team play, if you watch them, you wouldn't even think Tim is the captain of that team. That's how I look at him. Like, when I watch that team play, it's like when Duncan went and sat out last night, Miami didn't run away with it. It was like you don't really hold it down, when you're in there. You're just consistent. You're a guy we gotta play against. In other words, I'm sure Miami was more comfortable to play against him than they were against Roy Hibbert. He's not really striking fear in anybody. And I know people will say, well, yeah, he's 135 years old. I got it. But Tim's career, to me, has kind of always been like this, where it's always been, a David Robinson and Vinny Del Negro and Avery Johnson, those teams, and then you come back with so he's had what I like to call franchise success, like organizational success, but he hasn't been the reason for the season. So, I mean, I'm not discrediting the guy. Obviously, I know he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. I know that. And I know that, he should be in the conversation of great, players all time, power forwards. But great players, I'm having a hard time seeing it. I don't know. I mean, where do you think he ranks? Is he top 10?
As far as players, I'll probably leave him a little bit outside of the top 10.
Okay.
But, I mean, you can't, especially if you win if they win this year, 5 rings, that's, that puts them, like, up there, no doubt. But he'll probably be a little bit outside the top 10.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm speaking from, well, to me, I don't even know if I'd say top 25. And I know that's a little strong for some people. Some people might say, well, maybe you just hate on the dude or you need to give him a break or whatever. But, to me, I've never seen Tim Duncan, even in those years where, we traded off. It was us, it was them, it was us, it was them. I'm talking about Lakers. It was us, it was them. For those few years in the early to mid 2000s, where it was either San Antonio or the Lakers winning a championship. I've just never seen, Tim Duncan be so dominant that it's like, wow, Tim Duncan, he's wow, And I know some people will say, well, he's boring. He's just a boring player. He's not the guy that, you want him to be because, he's not flashy. He's just fundamental. Right, but what I'm saying to you is fundamental doesn't mean nothing if you don't have a Tony Parker on your team and a Manu Ginobili and guys like that. I mean, they're clearly a team. They're not, is Tim Duncan's the engine, that drives them, that makes them go. So, again, my thing is it's hard for me to say that you're the best player or even one of the best players of all time when I can honestly look at your team and say, okay, they made the finals in 07. They won it all. Okay? It's 2013. That's 6 years. So in the last 6 years, I can't even say you've been the best player on your team. And if they win the championship this year, we know he's not going to be the MVP. So if you've been in the league for 16 years, or this is your 17th year, but the last 7 you really haven't even been the best player on your team, what are we looking at? So I know some people may look at that and say that's a bit harsh, but, I mean, to me it is what it is. I don't look at Tim Duncan and say, I'm going to put him in the same breath as a Karl Malone or a Larry Bird or even a Kevin McHale, or somebody like that, or, great power forwards of our time, a Charles Barkley. I'm not going to put him in that breath. I'm not going to do it, because I think that his career has been that it's just been one of consistency, which is enough.
All right, let's say Barkley, let's say that Malone played with Parker. Do you think that Malone would still be the best player on the team?
Yes. Because if you look at their careers, John Stockton is still one of the greatest point guards to ever play basketball, and never gets a shred of credit for it because Karl Malone was so incredibly dominant. He never gets a shred of credit. And I'm not talking about like we know how dominant Kobe Bryant is. And Kobe Bryant has won championships without Shaq. So you can't really say that Kobe only won championships because of Shaq.
Right.
And Shaq's dominance to me didn't overshadow how great Kobe was. But Karl Malone, he overshadowed how great John Stockton was. But when you look at that team and you see how dominant Parker is, Tony Parker's dominance to me just kind of overshadows that whole team. I mean, he makes you forget about Manu. He makes you forget about Tim. And then their role players, the role players, the guys that they got that come in, Kawhi Leonard and Danny and people Green like that, stuff like that. I mean, when DeJuan Blair was there, I mean, they've always had guys that come through the pipeline.
Well, DeJuan Blair is still on the team. He just Tiago Splitter.
I'm saying when he first came in. He was a banger, rebounder. He just did everything. They have such great hustle guys that work so hard. I mean, hell, Robert Horry got championships there. You see what I'm saying? So it's Popovich, it's hustle, it's a lot of different things. And I think that Tim Duncan is one of those guys that, sure, he's going to go into the Hall of Fame, but I think the discussion is even there that he should be, if you're going to rank everybody, he's never ranked. And I think it's because he's kind of the quote-unquote good guy. It's not sexy to kind of put him down. You know, the media doesn't really talk a lot of stuff about him, you know, a lot of smack. And so they really don't say anything about him. But, you know, you're quick to rank Kobe Bryant. You know, you're quick to rank LeBron James. You know, you're quick to rank everybody else according to Michael Jordan. And, you know, me personally, I just don't think Tim adds up to a Larry Bird or a guy that, you know, played a dominant power forward. Hell, I'd give James Worthy the nod over Tim Duncan. And that's not just because I grew up watching James Worthy, but because James Worthy, beast. I mean, just super beast. So I think Tim has always kind of been this, you know, the franchise, the cornerstone, kind of like the, you know, keeping the blueprints of your house the same, but you get different furniture. You know what I mean? So, you know, if somebody says you have a beautiful house because you've gotten different furniture, but the foundation of your house remains the same, yeah, that's all good and fine. But, you know, what are we giving credit to? You know, that you got an IKEA card or that, you know, you have a great contractor. So hats off to Tim, you know, for keeping it going and keeping it motivating. But I don't think he deserves to be in a conversation of greatest ever. I don't think he deserves to be in a conversation of a Michael Jordan. I don't even think he deserves to be in a conversation of a Scottie Pippen. I don't. I think, to me, he's top 25 all time. And that's mainly just because he's been so consistent. He's won so many championships. And, you know, 5 puts him up there, you know, right up there with anybody else you can name. But, again, don't talk to me about how great individually he is, because I think that he's always enjoyed the benefit, and I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way or think that I'm trying to demean the guy, but I think he's always had the benefit of, number one, playing in a great system. You know, number two, being a very good player, a very consistent player. But I think that, and he's had a ton of help. And when I say a ton of help, I'm talking about more help than a Kobe Bryant. I'm talking about more help than your average, you know, your team. I'm talking about like how.
Yeah, more. I mean, I think he's had more help than Malone had, because
absolutely
you look at the third best player on Utah back then. It was, you know, Jeff Hornacek, you know, Russell, you know, whoever else they have as their third best player isn't better than Manu Ginobili. So.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. I mean, the guy won his own gold medal. I mean, let's not take anything away from Manu. Manu got his own gold medal. That guy won 3 championships as a sixth man. That guy could start on any team in the league. So again, I'm not saying who he played with means that we should knock some shine off of Duncan's trophies. But, you know, individually, I don't think he's been that cornerstone, dominant, you know, power forward, you know, just carry a franchise player. I don't think so. Yeah, he's first ballot because they're going to look at the years he spent with the team. It's impressive. It's impressive.
Yeah, because the last guy that he's played probably Reggie Miller before him.
Yeah, it's impressive to say a guy. I mean, nowadays, to even put it this way, to me, to even have a guy play with the franchise going into double digits almost qualifies you for the Hall of Fame. And that's one of the reasons I hope Paul Pierce doesn't leave the Celtics. Because I think if you leave the Celtics, to me that kind of tarnishes your legacy, because everything you got with the Celtics. And again, I'm no Celtic fan by any means. I'm not even a Paul Pierce fan. That wheelchair crap he did to me is still one of the most all-time embarrassing basketball moments I've seen. But, again, I'm the type of guy that I like loyalty. And if you've been loyal to the franchise all this time, man, retire with that team. So, again, you know, Tim has to be commended for that. But at the end of the day, you know, I don't think that, put it this way, I can say the same thing about certain players. Just in football, there's Tom Brady. You know, Shaquille O'Neal getting his. Huh?
It was Peyton.
It was Peyton Manning. Yeah. Although I think that Peyton Manning is a better quarterback than Tom Brady. So if you were to plug those two into a system that was ready-made, I'd put my money on Peyton before I put my money on Tom Brady. Even though I think Tom is more clutch, I just think overall Peyton Manning has more of the tools, better vision, stronger arm, things like that. But, again, there are certain players that you could plug into a system. You plug Shaquille O'Neal into, say, I don't know, the Atlanta Hawks. He doesn't have a fourth ring. Are you kidding? He doesn't get a fourth ring. He went to a system that was ready built.
He probably made the playoffs and maybe second round exit,
Yeah.
But
he doesn't make the playoffs, dude. He's in a system. He was a system that had a young stud in D Wade, and they were ready to rock and roll, and they made that playoffs and they made that championship and they won. But again, I don't think that certain players. So again, for me, if you take Tim Duncan and you put him on, say, I don't know, the Atlanta Hawks, I don't think they have a championship. I really don't. I'm just keeping it 100. And I know some people may look at me and say, well, John, maybe you're a little sour about the championships or the years that they beat you guys in the Western Conference Finals, whatever. Not really. Because I've seen Tim play his whole career, and I don't want to hear about boring. I don't want to hear about, he didn't have what so-and-so had. I don't want to hear all that.
He didn't do it with a lot of flash and flare, yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to hear all that. Who cares? He didn't do it with a lot of flash and flare. I don't care to hear all that. Because at the end of the day, consistency is what counts, but your individual numbers aren't such that people will look at you and say, damn, we could have plugged him anywhere and he'd have tore it up. We could have plugged him in any system. He could have played for any coach. Him and Pop, it's clear, have a relationship. Him and Pop have always, been together, obviously. And, I don't know. But I know damn well he's not the best player on that team right now. And I know for a fact that, it's been I texted you that last night that it's been the Tony Parker show. So, hats off to them. They deserve it. They earned it. Get off LeBron's back, media. Start getting on some of these other guys and see what happens. Eric Spoelstra's game plan is just obviously not working. You can't let these guys run all night anymore. They're not young. You don't got the young horses you once had. So, what say you?
Yeah, man. Eric Spoelstra. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. But I got what I got your point though. I got what your point. I think that Eric Spoelstra I don't think he needs to be held more accountable because Lord knows, look, I hate when these young coaches get an opportunity and they get lumped in and slapped in with these super teams. And so it almost appears as if the guy is really successful, we're going to give the team success. But if the guy stinks, we're going to fire him and blame him so that he'll never get credit. It's kind of like what the Clippers did to Vinny Del Negro, because whether people understand it or know it or not, when the baby Bulls started coming and the baby Bulls were on the up and rise, Vinny was right in the mix of it. He was a head coach before. He was in Chicago. So, again, for me, you can't give these guys credit when they win, or the team credit and forget about the coach, because you don't like Eric Spoelstra because he's a young cat, or he's a youngster, and so he doesn't get the press. But they clearly.
So, speaking about coaches, George Karl. There's some good coaches out there right now. George Karl, Lionel Hollins, Byron Scott. I think B. Shaw's going to get an opportunity with somebody. I'm just waiting to see what team he ends up with. So there's some good coaching candidates out there. What do you think about George Karl with the Clippers? Do you think that would work, or?
My thought on that is this. My thought on that whole thing is this. When I said that George Karl shouldn't have got the Coach of the Year, And I basically feel like Mark Jackson was robbed. I'm gonna stick to my guns on that because it's clear that I think that they wanted to send him out on a good note, just because of what he has done and meant to the league and how important he's been to the league. But again, I don't think you should do that at the expense of another coach like Mark Jackson. So it's clear it was kind of a swan song. We're gonna kind of give you this, this opportunity because we know you'll never get it again. You were a good guy for the league. You made us a lot of money. You've been a coach before. A coach of the year candidate. You were a good coach in the past. Do I think he's a Hall of Famer coach? Possibly, maybe on longevity, but to me, when I heard about him not being retained next year and he still had a year on his contract, so you basically firing him. Like if this was at the end of his contract and then they didn't pick up the option, fine. But if you have another year on your contract and we're gonna like low key fire you, that coach of the year is even more unjustified than I thought it was before. It's even more unjustified because now I'm thinking you really didn't probably even want him to have the coach of the year and somebody's arm got twisted.
Yeah. And then
they
also fired their GM too, so they're going to be doing a new GM management coach.
Yeah, your arm got twisted. That's all that was. Your arm got twisted, and we wanted George Karl to have a good send off, and so we did it like that. But no. That to me just didn't even smell right. How they did the whole, coach of the year, and then by the way, we're firing you next year. No, the difference here is when they did it to Avery Johnson, because that's the most recent example I could think of that a guy won coach of the year and then he got fired. When they did it to Avery Johnson, that was ego. We all knew what that was. That was ego. That was Mark Cuban saying, you know what, you're going to do what I say, when I say, how I say it. And that was ego, and it was dirty. This was like sympathy. Because I don't know how you give a guy coach of the year. I mean, this ain't like when the San Diego Chargers fired Marty Schottenheimer and after a 14-game winning season. That was also ego, and everybody saw it. The writing was on the wall. This wasn't ego. This was like the sympathy vote, man, and it just stunk to me because clearly Mark Jackson deserved the coach of the year. Mark Jackson deserved coach of the year. No, there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. No question about it. No kind of, we should have maybe kind of, sort of. No. Mark Jackson, what he did for those guys going into the postseason in that playoff run, everything that they did this year, they should have beat the Spurs. We all know it. They should have beat the Spurs.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Come on. Oh, come on. I feel for what George Karl went through. Beating cancer. Hey, my dad beat cancer. I know I don't know what it's like to go through it, and I hope to God I never find out. But still, nevertheless, that was a sympathy vote for me. Because if you're going to can him the next year, then, you never really were intent on letting him, where that coach is. So in other words, that's how your coaching career goes out. If that's the last game he coaches, we're going to make sure you get a coach of the year, and then we're going to send you off. That's crap, man. That's crap. That is such like political hogwash to me. That's hogwash, man. That really is. We're gonna give you the championship, but then we're gonna disqualify you from the sport so you can never play again. Come on, man. Come on. That to me just stunk of that just stunk to me of political, kind of goodwillsmanship, like, oh, we're going to make ourselves, in the league, we're going to make ourselves look good. And come on. I'm not buying it. But anyway, man, I know you got things to do. I got things to do as well. We got to get on into this day. Obviously, we're going to be prepared for Game 2, which is Sunday of the finals. Best of luck to the Kings and Kings fans. I did not get an opportunity to talk with you about your trip to the Edison. What is it called now? Edison Field or Neo Microcon Field?
Just Angel Stadium.
Oh, good. Good. It's called Angel Stadium again, huh? Good.
Yeah,
but anyway.
Cubbies were able to sneak one out.
Yeah.
In 10 innings, they won 8-6.
Yeah, we'll rap about it later. I'm sure we'll touch base. We'll have more baseball updates next week, and we'll talk some more about it then. But if there's nothing else that you have on your plate, I will bid you adieu and goodbye.
I'll say Heat and 6. Heat and 6.
Oh my God, you are. I don't know, but here's the thing. I don't know what more LeBron can do. If his teammates are going to complain that they don't get enough touches, and then when they get the touches, they miss every shot in the book, I don't know what they can do different except hit a bunch of threes, because clearly San Antonio is a three-point shooting team. That's it, in my opinion. That's all I saw. And then I saw some Tony Parker. I saw flat greatness from Tony Parker and a bunch of threes. That's it. So, defensively, they really didn't hold Miami. Miami only scored 16 points in the fourth quarter. So 16 points for Miami in the fourth quarter. 16 points. That to me it's unforgivable. So I don't know what more LeBron can do. I've been saying it all playoffs. I don't think he's getting any damn help. So I'm going to stick to that. But anywho, all right, man. Make sure you're ready for us next week. We'll have, obviously, Game 2 will be in the books. We might be working on Game 3 by the time we get to it. And we'll have some more insight for you, cooking ideas, tips, recipes, suggestions, comments, StacySports.com. Adam, I appreciate you as always.
Holla.